For 30 years, the Resident Evil franchise has dominated the survival horror genre. Chaos-inducing fixed camera angles evolved into over-the-shoulder action, and eventually the suffocating first-person terror of the most recent games. We've gone from solving puzzles in hilltop mountains, to boulder punches and roundhouse kicks, to up-close and personal jump scares. And somehow, Capcom takes all of these beloved elements and merges them beautifully into one terrifyingly fantastic experience. I'm Kat from Friendly Fire, and this is my review of Resident Evil Requiem. When it comes to talking about Resident Evil Requiem, I feel like there aren't enough words that can fully encapsulate the feelings that I experienced as I traversed this blood-soaked terror fest. Over the course of my roughly 10-hour playthrough, I found everything I could ever want in a video game. It was undoubtedly one of the best experiences I've ever had. From navigating the claustrophobic corridors of the chronic care home as Grace Ashcroft to causing carnage with whatever I could get my hands on as Leon, I enjoyed every single moment of this game. The most prominent part of Requiem is the contrast between Grace and Leon's parts of the game. I love playing as both characters, and honestly, it felt like I was stepping into two completely different games, and it worked beautifully, and neither one outshone the other. In fact, it felt like I was consistently swapping between Resident Evil 4 and Biohazard. When introduced to Grace, she's a timid and easily frightened character, but that's what makes her segments so terrifying. Obviously not just that, but more on that later. The default camera setting for Grace is first person, probably due to the success of Biohazard and Village. However, I chose to play in third person. I was super interested to see how Grace's character model would react to her environments, and I was not disappointed. Normally, Resident Evil protagonists are unshakable machines with cheesy one-liners and brute strength, or they're a dad on a mission. However, Grace is the complete opposite of that. She's easily startled and undoubtedly the most realistic and relatable character of the Resident Evil franchise. She isn't used to these circumstances, and she's surviving off pure fear, and it was incredible to see. She stumbles when running away from enemies, and she physically shakes when aiming her gun at incoming zombies. These details may seem small and insignificant, but they heighten the fear factor and they make it so much more tangible. Not only that, but most of the time you're forced to take it slow and sneak around enemies. Ammo is precious for the first few hours, and any that you do find should be kept as a last resort, instead relying on empty bottles and perfectly timed maneuvers. As I said, however, playing as Leon is a completely different story. I felt much calmer and much safer when playing through his sections, even when faced with an onslaught of enemies, purely because of how his character feels. He's been through too much to be rattled, and it translated perfectly to his combat. Unlike Grace, I could go in all guns blazing and literally take the heads off of anything that got in my way. Requiem is by far the most gore-filled, action-packed entry, and it's an absolute blast. Not once did I get bored with the combat. And it felt just as good as it looked too. Every swing of the axe felt powerful and heavy, and delivering headshot after headshot with the shotgun was extremely satisfying, especially with the haptic feedback on the DualSense. But not only was his combat fun, seeing Leon on screen again was amazing. He's just as confident as ever, delivering one-liners while hacking and slashing and executing gloriously over-the-top eliminations. I felt like I was back in the village, wondering if everyone was going to bingo. Requiem's graphics aren't just visually stunning, they feel unnervingly realistic, and they beautifully bring every blood-soaked hallway and every faint flicker of light to life. It's no surprise though. The RE engine is incredibly powerful, and it's clear that Capcom can utilise the engine better than anyone else. Requiem undeniably delivers the most atmospheric and detailed environments the series has ever seen. While the recent entries and remakes looked amazing, Resident Evil 9 has set the bar high for whatever comes next. However, it's not just the graphics that stand out. The environments and the sound design work in tandem to create a constant sense of unease. Every room in Requiem feels lived in, like ordinary daily activities unfolded before all hell broke loose. The care centre is by far the most uncomfortable area of the game. Empty, blood-stained hospital beds and abandoned offices are enough to make anyone uncomfortable, but that combined with the winding corridors and suffocating silence, apart from the occasional shuffle of undead feet, makes every step feel tense. Even later areas, which I won't spoil, feel extremely well designed, but as disturbing as the visuals are, when paired with sound, it's a whole new level. And it's where the tension truly reaches its climax. You can hear enemies muttering behind closed doors, or singing to themselves, or the chef smashing his knife into clumps of God knows what, their voices echoing through the halls before they can be seen. Even something as simple as Grace's footsteps, or the hum of lights, heighten the tension dramatically. These elements work harmoniously to deeply instill a sense of dread and trepidation in the halls of the care home. However, these elements wouldn't hit as hard without the enemies that truly bring the threat to life, especially during Grace's sections. They aren't like the zombies we've seen in previous Resident Evil games. Their movements feel unnatural and unpredictable, almost like a fusion of the lichens and the lickers. What makes them even more disturbing is that they retain fragments of their personalities, muttering, reacting, and behaving in ways that suggest there's still something human underneath. That contrast makes every encounter feel heavy with tension. The first confrontation at Renwood Hotel was enough to set the tone for the rest of the game. The enemies are much more disturbing and unnerving, even with a gun in your hand. I frequently found myself pausing before heading into a room where I knew I wasn't alone. They charge at you unnaturally while screaming fragments of their past life, and if they live in a care centre, it's not exactly like they're telling a bedtime story. They are genuinely unsettling. The Stalker enemy is an entirely different story, however. Although you encounter a range of unique enemies, this one stands out the most. It may be blind, but its extreme sensitivity to sound made me think twice before taking a single step. Now, these enemies may seem unsettling to Grace, but that's purely because of her vulnerability and inexperience. When playing as Leon, I was no longer trapped in the centre with the enemies, they were instead trapped in there with me. Those same enemies that forced careful movement and planning were now dispatched with ease. Instead of hiding, I was walking through rooms, knocking them down with a pistol and finishing with a kick to the head, and that shift between fear and power was thrilling. Resident Evil Requiem is the biggest, boldest, and most beautiful entry the series has ever produced, yet at no point does it let its expanded scale dilute what makes Resident Evil so effective. The environments are vast, but the tension remains intimate. Combat feels heavy and deliberate, each shot carrying weight, while exploration is just as nerve-wracking as any encounter. There are subtle traces of nearly every era of Resident Evil woven throughout Requiem, but they never feel forced, instead repurposed to create an entirely original experience. Nothing here is imitation. Instead, it feels like a harmony, a confident fusion of the franchise's past and present into something that stands firmly on its own. Grace and Leon's segments could not be more different, and that contrast is where Requiem truly shines. Swapping between them feels like stepping into two distinct experiences, one defined by vulnerability and fear, the other by hardened experience and controlled intensity. After roughly 10 hours of tension, terror, and relentless intensity, I can confidently say that Resident Evil Requiem stands among the franchise's greatest achievements. It's a complete experience, and without hesitation, Requiem is a 10 out of 10.